I think around the word patriarchy, I mean, it's because sometimes, Tim, it has been used in a bit of a weaponized and reductive way. I think we can be honest about that. Sometimes words in spaces have been used to smash people around the back of the head. I'm not a fan of that. At the end of the day, you don't get people to change behaviours and change perspectives by giving them a good kicking most of the time. You actually got to get them to kind of approach it from their perspective, kind of meet them where they're at, and get them to see, actually, this system isn't any good for you, and actually it's stopping you being who you want to be, and it's holding you back, and it's giving you less opportunities. So actually, you should be angry at it, but angry at the thing, not angry at the word.
Good afternoon, everybody, and it's a pleasure to be with you today. I'm Lee Chambers, founder of an inclusive wellbeing company. I'm a psychologist by background. I'm a bit of a misfit. I am an outsider. I am not within the industry.
So we look at some of the challenges in the wellbeing space
in ensuring that we create a more inclusive and equitable world.
Caring responsibility shouldn't default to women, because men can actually be great carers.
So I'm Lee Chambers.
Lee Chambers.
Lee Chambers.
Lee Chambers.
My guest today is Lee Chambers, a phenomenal business psychologist, male allyship specialist and speaker. He's a fellow neurodivergent entrepreneur who's based in the northwest of England, but is working globally, and he's passionate about inclusive leadership, male allyship, and menopause awareness.
The best thing is the social media posts about it. Well, I created a 9-figure business. I started with nothing. No employees, no understanding, no consideration, no network. But I did have 9 million seed funding from my dad. And it's always like I'm self-made, like blah 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 blah. But actually, I'm the CEO of a fintech at 21. I didn't go to university. I didn't go to college. I haven't got Goldman Sachs on my CV. But my dad owns a company. it's just like they even wanted to humble brag about it. But no, it's just the sad reality is it's selling a dream.
Yes,
it sells a dream that causes young people to take risks that then ends up in a bad place. They end up disenfranchised and then end up unhappy and searching for validation, which puts them into someone else's loop. But I'm really passionate about closing some of the gender gaps that exist. Because if we close those gaps, we make the world a better place. People can really be who they are, and people have the autonomy to choose. You can go and be a stay-at-home dad, or you can work 80 hours a week, but it's your choice. You can get flexibility there. As a woman, you can go and build a career, you can have children, you can have a choice, rather than it have to be a certain way based on who you are as a gender. That frustrates me. Because those stereotypes that play a role in shaping who we are from so young, they stop people being who they are. And if people are who they are, they can bring the talents, bring the skills, do things that resonate with them, and actually come together and use the difference that we have as humans as our advantage. Because it's in our differences that we have advantage.
This is the CEO Retort, the podcast that doesn't go after clickbaits, but rather it invites inspiring guests, goes after important stories and campaigns for issues that you all care about. I'm Tim Al-Sheikh. Let's get after it.
You are listening to CEO Retort.
The first thought that comes to my mind, that here we are, two guys talking about women's rights. Now, I know for a fact this will rile up a few people. Probably some women, I don't know, but definitely it's going to rile up some men. So, discuss.
Yeah, well, the thing is, at the end of the day, women's rights are everyone's rights and impact everyone. And there's no reason why we shouldn't be in a position where we only fight for our own rights, given the nature of the world it is today and the division that's out there. And the truth is, we're not speaking for other people. We want to speak with other people. We want to stand up for the rights of people who we sit alongside, we work with, we live with, we love. And at the end of the day, we need more togetherness in this polarized world. So it's a conversation that needs to be had, Tim. And, we need to be advocating for more than ourselves. Because individually, we can achieve a bit. Collectively, we can achieve an awful lot.
Absolutely, amen to that. And I'm a big believer as well with the idea that, women represent half of humanity. And if we don't help half of humanity, then there is no humanity, right? I mean, we can't just survive on our own, as it were.
Well, no, and the old consideration that every man is born from a woman. Well, we all got a mother. So without women, we won't even be here. So like, if we want to extrapolate it back to that, we realise that every part of the human experience needs to be knit together to create who we are. And if we neglect part of that, then we're not just neglecting other people, we're neglecting the very fabric of what holds us together as a species and what's got us to evolve on this crazy ass planet to this point. So actually, it's almost short-sighted to think that women's rights are not important. It's something we should all be ensuring that people have the rights that they deserve. And women have been fighting for that. Truth is, men need to also be fighting for things that impact them, because women's rights impact men.
But not only that, the situation with women's rights actually is caused by the patriarchy, which we men created. Now, perhaps not our generation, but the older generation of men. So it's not like it's our fault. And I think it's important to highlight, because sometimes I see people say that, oh, it's all men's fault. And I'm like, that could alienate some men and who are very sensitive, right? But I think it's important to highlight that, if we're talking about cleaning up history, as it were, then we need to be accurate that historically men created the patriarchy to benefit men, not because they gave a crap about women or frankly anyone. So I see that it is effectively a mess that we sort of created, and it's our responsibility to clean it up. So it's not that we should tell women, okay, step aside, let us fix this. It's kind of like mansplaining, isn't it? But to say that, like, look, we recognize that our I suppose great grandfathers and grandfathers created the patriarchy, and therefore we should be as responsible in destroying and eliminating the patriarchy, so that basically, like you said, men and women together can basically move forward, right?
Yeah, we all have responsibility to come together to dismantle systems that don't really support us, that don't really help us, and don't allow us to express who we actually are. We've got to be honest about the history. Obviously, patriarchy is a prickly term for some people, but it ultimately refers to a system that's been created by humans. But we've existed on this planet for a long, long time without any patriarchal systems whatsoever. As hunter-gatherers, we were a very, equitable society where we assigned roles, kept ourselves alive. We had that target to, kind of create small communities, hunt together, live together, care for each other. And it was only when we decided to utilize agriculture and started claiming land as our own did any kind of patriarchy even start to exist. And there was just a simple realization from a few men that if I went round to, the man next door, bashed him on the head, killed his family, I could nick his goats and eat his crops. And actually, I didn't have to put any work in for that. Whereas I had to tend to all my animals and, plough through my own fields. But if I went and beat him up and nicked his, that was quite easy. The sad reality is patriarchy is built on lazy, ill-willed people stealing off other people. Very similar to capitalism, let's be honest, when it's not delivered in a very conscious and considerate way. But those systems are very deeply interlinked. But it wasn't until people started doing that, bash your neighbour on the head and steal his his crops and his animals and maybe his children, that we created this world of warlords and emperors and kings who just did that at scale. And just tried to, they didn't take the neighbour's freeholding. They tried to take the bloody empire next door. And still got that same crazy power dynamic stuff going on today. And now it's, still trying to steal other people's land. But now it's also trying to steal the resources, steal the data, and steal the narrative. So we all have a role to play within that, knowing that it's only existed for a very small part of humanity. And we play a role within it, even if we've not created it ourselves. But that doesn't stop us thinking about how we use some of the tools we've got as humans to actually think about how we can start to create a system that just does work better for everyone. Because if we think about the things that are impacting men, whether it be decreasing life satisfaction and life happiness, whether it's mental health issues, whether it's addiction, suicide, whether it's educational attainment for boys in schools, lots of social indicators aren't going the right way for men either, which means the system isn't working for us. So how do we actively work to dismantle a system that's going to benefit everyone? We actually sometimes start how we can do that in a way that benefits other people. Because funnily enough, almost everything that impacts women also has an impact on men. And lots of things that impact men also impact women too. So it's just that realization. This isn't one type of fight. It's about coming together, linking arms, creating some change.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this actually reminds me of a conversation I had with Professor Jo Marr. So she's the Vice Chancellor of Sport for Loughborough University. So for the listeners who don't know, Loughborough University is like one of the top universities in the world for sport. And part of her work, and I think at the moment she's the only pro Vice Chancellor of Sport in the world. So she literally made history, and she's an ex-footballer. And one of the things that she was telling me was the fact that they're trying to redesign the facilities, all the sporting facilities, to make it more quote unquote women's friendly, as it were, because obviously it was designed for men.
Yeah.
But then, and I was like, yeah, I remember, because I was an ex-pro athlete in the 90s. So it wasn't pleasant, but us men, we don't kind of care. But what the point she made is that even though it's designed to make it women friendly, but it's not necessarily targeting women exclusively. It's because it's women friendly. It's friendly for everybody. It's about comfort, right? So when she was actually describing it in the episode here, the kind of facilities they were building, I'm like, bloody hell, that sounds nice. I wouldn't mind some of that myself. And that's the point, isn't it? It's like the fact that we're making things better for women. It's not necessarily mean that we're alienating men, but rather it's actually better for everybody, because because going back to the point you made as well, effectively, we are naturally egotistic as creatures, men, that is, right? So when we create something or build something that is uncomfortable, we're like, well, I'm a man, take it on the chin, it doesn't matter, if whatever. And I think that's the kind of the reality that we're witnessing, that the fact that, I mean, I don't know, this is because you kind of made the other point as well that kind of triggered a thought in my mind, that you mentioned that some men get a little bit triggered when you mention patriarchy. And I'm trying to understand why. Is it because you want to continue living uncomfortably for the rest of your life? Or is it fear that because, women are in the conversation, that then therefore now men are being sidelined or something, which of course is not true. There's no evidence of that. But some people try to kind of make a big hay out of this. Say, hey, look, DEI is anti-men. No, it's not. What the fuck are you talking about? But you see what I'm saying? It's like there's some kind of weird fear of getting rid of the patriarchy, even though it's actually, like you said, it's good for everybody, men included.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much that could be said, Tim. I mean, firstly, yeah, if we make processes, systems, places more inclusive, they do become better for everyone. That's really clear. And there are universal benefits to designing things in a universal way, right? It's really quite simple. But as human beings, sometimes we do I had to hustle, I had to sacrifice, I had to be uncomfortable, and I had to use those grimy ass changing rooms where it was freezing cold and the showers didn't work half the time. And I got through it. So everyone else should have to go through it as well. That was a defining experience for me. It made me really resilient. And it's like, no, there's lots of things in society that you complain about if they were still like they were back in the day. All these technological advancements you're raving about, why don't we have the same advancements in the simple things that we expect as humans around the stuff that we do? I mean, reductive it can be, and sometimes I think people just need to take a step back and think that the world's evolving. You can either be part of the change and stay relevant, or you can get left behind. And I think in itself, people react to this in different ways. I think around the word patriarchy, I mean, it's because sometimes, Tim, it has been used in a bit of a weaponized and reductive way. I think we can be honest about that. Sometimes words in spaces have been used to smash people around the back of the head. I'm not a fan of that at the end of the day. you don't get people to change behaviours and change perspectives by giving them a good kicking most of the time. You actually got to get them to kind of approach it from their perspective, kind of meet them where they're at, and get them to see, actually, yeah, this system isn't any good for you, and actually it's stopping you being who you want to be, and it's holding you back, and it's giving you less opportunities. So actually, you should be angry at it, but angry at the thing, not angry at the word. Like, if we get to a point where we get angry at words, then we're struggling, because we never get down to the action to actually make the difference to what we're doing. And the word itself just refers to a socially constructed system that kind of bakes misogyny into things where it don't need to be there, that kind of tells men exactly how you have to be. And if you don't be like that, you get judged by a whole group of other men who are trying to conform and sit in the same box of manhood, trapped because you've got to be a certain way. And the sad reality is that sold us freedom to get all that control and self-sufficiency, independence, power, status. But it's the biggest trap going. You get stuck in that jail cell trying to chase that, never explore who you actually are and how you can bring that to the world. And there's so much power in actually understanding who you are, because that's freedom. People tell you freedom is control, is power, is resource. Freedom is knowing who the hell you are and being able to turn up every day and just be you and know and be assured, confident in who you are and know what you stand for.
Yeah, amen. And again, because like one of the examples I always like to use is martial arts, because I used to coach martial arts for like 15 years, actually, long time. And one of the things that we used to do, that was sort of before the UFC became a thing. So that's like sort of in the very early 2000s. And the idea was like myself and the other guys, we thought, we wanted to create a martial arts club where basically we tried to get people off the streets. And martial arts is not really about the fighting. It's not about the ego. So actually, we were probably the only club where we were saying to people, okay, look, yeah, we will teach you how to be an expert in beating people up. But we're not actually teaching you for that reason. We're teaching you the key principles of martial arts, which is about self-control, but self-awareness. And people always underestimate how, difficult it is to have self-awareness. But also, once you become more self-aware, you become more humble as a result of that. Like, nobody's telling you to be humble, but once you develop that self-awareness, it is freedom. You start to understand who you are. You start to understand what you stand for, which is kind of interesting. It is psychological. It's like people's barriers are in their heads. And, and one thing that we've discovered, because we had loads of people, men, women, children, all ages. And the one thing we realized is like how many people have all sorts of issues in their lives that kind of just creates this sort of barrier in their mind. And, through martial arts, which is something, sounds really simple, but it's not, because it's about self-confidence. It's about self-belief. It's about, trusting the people around you, etc. All of that really made a huge difference. And I always remind people, and I'm going to get a little bit political here, but that was the period, for example, when we had the coalition government that was elected in 2011, I think it was, and they introduced austerity. That basically ended our club, many other social clubs like that. All of these people ended up in the streets again. And guess what? Crime went up. And some people try to kind of disassociate these two, say, oh, no, it has nothing to do with that. I'm like, oh, it has everything to do with that. We got kids off the streets, and we actually in some tiny way, we actually helped them change their lives through these community activities. And I've known people in London that they had massive community centers that all shut down, and everybody ended up in the streets. And now we've got this new generation that has nowhere to go apart from people like Andrew Tate, etc. And here we are. So you're absolutely right. Helping people understand these things is really important. And I think it's the system that failed them.
Yeah, don't get me started on that, Tim. Like, in our research that's getting released in the autumn, 81% of the young boys that we spoke to said there are not enough physical spaces for them to be a boy and learn how to be a man. And again, around martial arts, it's incredibly powerful. Martial arts gives you that humility, gives you that self-awareness. One of the big things for me that gets missed is you start with the basics. No matter who you are, no matter who you turn up as, your first day in the gym, you're working on that footwork, on holds, on basic moves, on very simple things that you will build into combinations and build into more advanced skills as you go. But you start as a beginner. And the truth is, in our allyship work, right, we all start as a beginner in having an understanding of other people's lived experiences and challenges. But we're curious. We actively work on those basics. We never take the fundamentals for granted. And we work on those basics over and over again until they become a skill that we can just operate on. And then we can build on those skills. And there's discipline there. There's understanding that it's going to be uncomfortable at the start, being that beginner, and seeing other people who are advanced just kind of looking at you like, yeah, you got a long way to go. And knowing that if you do any kind of sparring or any kind of practice with other people, that they might potentially be a lot more developed at that skill that you are, and you sure as hell know about it when you are. But there's massive amounts of awareness there in seeing how that discomfort that you face becomes your growth all the time. And it's no different than working on those inclusion skills, how to work with difference. And you also, in that space, realise there are lots of different people in the club, all coming from all different forms of life, just to get a shared goal, creating a bit of a community, supporting each other, of just being able to do something that binds people together, and it gives you more mastery of your body. The truth is that mastery is incredibly important because that takes time. And we see how people respect each other based on seeing and understanding the amount of time and effort that's gone in to master those skills. The thing around physical spaces, I think 72% of funding for youth services is gone.
Even today.
It's been stripped away. Yeah. I mean, it's just like all this youth provision, all these spaces for young people to kind of do activities that kind of upskill them, that give them a space to explore, spaces where they're just safe to kind of understand and come together. Like I've had young lads saying, the youth club's closed after the pandemic, it's not reopened. Scouts, cadets, got waiting lists, can't go. Like they built flats on the field we used to play on, just hanging about on the street. We just get called antisocial and judged, and there's lots of crime happening, kids running around with zombie knives, county lines, gangs trying to recruit us. I'll just sit in my room, and 50% of the lads that we spoke to said their online world is more engaging, rewarding, and interesting than real life, the real world. And there's lots of reasons for that, but they just feel, the online world has places where they might get listened to, where they might get understood, where they don't feel like they're going to get rejected, where they can explore their insecurities. And it's sad because obviously the online world is just designed to create communities and monetize and exploit people. And, young boys are really susceptible to that because they're searching for belonging, they're searching for someone to listen and understand. All the boys that we spoke to that have fallen deep into the manosphere and all types of crazy ass content, they all started looking for how do I speak to girls? How do I get bigger muscles? How do I look more attractive? How do I be successful? How do I build a business? They're looking for boy personal development, or they're watching things that boys watch. Bit of combat sport, bit of football, bit of fitness, bit of cars.
Yeah.
Oh, I lost you for a minute then, Tim.
Yeah, me too. It's fine. Maybe we can edit this bit out. So that's fine.
Yeah, cool. I'm just waiting for you to catch up. Right, there we go. So yeah, young boys are just looking for personal development, and whether that is, how to have more muscles, how to look better, how to speak to girls, how to be successful, how to make money. They're looking for personal development. All they're looking at things that boys look at: combat sports, football, music videos, films, cars, and they just get funneled down into that content and then gradually pulled into communities where they're getting groomed to be sold to in the future. And it's hard for them to see that that's happening. But there's so much there, Tim, and I'm incredibly passionate about the work that I do around allyship with men in the workplace and bringing men and women together in the workplace to look how they can make places more inclusive, how they can learn the skills of allyship, support each other on that journey. But obviously the work with boys in school I'm incredibly passionate about because there's so much going on, and even in our research over the past 6 months, things coming up like, young boys using AI for companionship and AI girlfriend apps are the current trending thing. So there's a lot going on, and that is some crazy stuff that we just didn't have when we were boys.
Absolutely, and I post about this on LinkedIn literally daily these days. It's quite crazy, like the number of teenage boys basically befriending chatbots. And the worst thing is, I always hear in the media, which really pisses me off, when they're going about, well, where are the parents? Where are the parents? The parents don't bloody know. The parents, there was actually a report that I shared on LinkedIn, even on the CEO Retort Journal as well, on the newsletter, like a few months ago, where there was this research that found that parents genuinely think that their kids use AI, all these chatbots, for homework, to do like search online or whatever. They haven't got a clue that these chatbots are capable of basically pretending to be your girlfriend or something like that. So their kids obviously explore. Kids being kids, they have the ability to explore. They're much more, actually, kids are way more technically capable than their parents. So when people go on about, parents are responsible, actually they're not, because they don't know. They don't understand the technology, which is one of the reasons why I do what I do. Is like, I want to inform people about what AI is and what it is not. And people think AI is the thing that it's actually not.
Yeah,
that's the fact.
I'm going to flip that a bit, Tim, and say, parents do have some responsibility. I think the biggest issue
but I'm not saying they have no responsibility. What I'm saying, they don't know the tech. So they genuinely, in good faith, think that their kids are just using it for their homework or whatever. But that's what I'm saying. It's hard to kind of say that parents are responsible to make sure that their kids are safe with AI. But if they don't know that AI is not safe, which is the reason why they need to be informed so that then they know what to do.
Yeah, I think that the biggest thing is, and I obviously spend this time with kids, and then, lots of my peers are parents. There's just gaps. So we're using a typical 40-year-old like me. He's using AI to create an executive summary from some big-ass document you don't want to read. He's creating some bullet points to make something more succinct for a slide. Is, kind of using it to check some references or put a bit of simple code together nice and quickly. And we're using it as we would do as an employee in the workplace. Young people aren't asking it the things that we are and using it as a bit of a search engine in the way that we do to complete tasks that we have. They are using it like they're chatting to another person. They're using it for validation. They're using it because they're lonely. And they're speaking to it like it's a person. Like it's another person just sat in a room somewhere, because they live a digital... They're digital natives. They live in a world where it almost feels like chatting to one of the friends across some platform. They've lived in a world where they got the headset on, playing Fortnite, shooting some people while speaking to the mates. It doesn't feel any different than that distance. It honestly feels like it's a real person. Obviously, these AI girlfriend apps, you design the goddamn girlfriend. You pick where her freckles are, what her eyebrows are like, what her hair colour is, what her breast size is, what she's wearing, what her attitude's like. And, kids are sat there like, oh, frigid mode, what's this? Boom. Oh, erotic mode. Have a bit of that. And there's massive damage in these apps because there is just no safeguards, no guardrails, and you can abuse them and they just validate it. It's scary, scary stuff. But it's exactly the same, Tim, with parents and influencers. So parents are like, oh my God, Andrew Tate, terrible. I speak to kids like Andrew Tate. Oh, I'm not bothered about him. He's like sat there drinking whiskey, smoking cigars in his bunker. Like that's how my dad likes shit like that. Me, I'm watching Sidemen, Beta Squad. Like I've got all these influencers that I'm watching. I ain't watching Andrew Tate. Like my parents are idiots thinking I'm sat there watching his stuff. And it's just that disconnect. We almost perceive that kids are using technology in the way that we do. And what's really funny is when we were that age, we were laughing at our own parents who couldn't even type an email, had no idea that we were in the chat room with our acronyms, talking to random strangers, that we were using our dial-up internet to pop on MSN Messenger or do some other crazy stuff. And our parents had no idea what we were doing, and they were like, "Oh, yeah, it's passing fad, this stuff." Like, no idea what they're doing, but we'll just leave them to it. It's exactly the same. We're making exactly the same mistake our own parents made, thinking, yeah, God knows what they're doing on that, but it's probably like how I use it, because they were using it in the workplace with a big-ass computer with Windows 3.1 to try and send an email across the network. And we were using it to do all sorts of things, like talking to random strangers on the other side of the planet, and download MP3s full of viruses and destroy our computers. We're basically playing out the same mistakes that our own parents made with us. And our own kids are like we were when we felt really smart because our parents didn't have any idea what we were doing, didn't get all the acronyms and all the words that we were using. And kids now are the same. Their own acronyms, their own emojis with different contexts, and parents have no idea.
Yes. No, 100%. But this is why I basically campaign for people to be aware of what AI is capable of, because AI is arguably it is the most powerful tool that actually is not designed for an adult to access, let alone children. But the other problem is, pretty much linked to everything that you just said in terms of how children use these models online. The thing is, even the tech companies themselves, and I actually had a conversation with Professor Sarah Graham. So she is like a world expert in how digital tech is being used with children. And she basically said that none of these AI algorithms understand how children behave online, because there's an assumption that children being, the innocent kids, they just want to play with toys, blah, blah, blah. But the thing is, the way children behave online, it's not like children, but it's not like adults. So the AI algorithms get confused. And in fact, I can't remember if she said which company, but part of their privacy policy, they don't use the term children. They say adults and unidentified users. Unidentified means children, but they can't legally say, a child. Well, define a child, or somebody who's above, 12 years old. Well, then, if you should be sued then if you're allowing 12-year-olds to use your tool. So they're being quite obscure about it, which is lazy. That's how I push it, that as a lazy AI, because they can't be bothered solving the problem. Because it is one of the biggest problems in the world of tech today. How do you create algorithms that effectively can figure out children's activity online? Right now, they can't. Yet, they are allowing children to use their tools. As I posted the other day, actually, a couple of days ago, I think, or yesterday even, about this startup that created, I think it's called School GPT. And they're marketing it as the AI TikTok for students at school, etc. But then if you manipulate it, like literally, it doesn't require a genius. Like somebody just from Forbes magazine, some journalist just played with it and basically gave you recipes of rape drug, right? How to chat up women and all the stuff that basically you would get from Andrew Tate. And that was designed for school children. I mean, it's crazy. So I think, that this is why I push for regulation. I mean, I'm an AI guy that says we need regulation, and this has got probably a whole different debate, but it's a very big problem right now that effectively the tech sector is actually making matters a lot worse.
Yeah, I mean, even regulations, Tim. So I kind of sat there and looked at kind of online safety act stuff in the UK and how we can kind of regulate more heavily around that. I mean, everything from nudges to age verification to identity verification to thinking how we can, there's so many things that are available, and yet if it's going to make a tech product less sticky or less money or less monetization opportunity, it's like the appetite is, it's not there. And I don't think this is the podcast to go too deep into that, but what's kind of interesting in the scheme of things is if we think about what's trained large language models so far in terms of historical and the everyday usage of things, the majority of users are adults.
Yeah.
So it's been trained from adult content, with adults generally being the ones who engage. So it almost presumes that it's speaking to an adult.
Yeah.
And we know that as much as AI has the ability to try and create sentiment to understand its user, at the end of the day, it's not a freaking human. It's some binary zeros and ones.
Yeah.
Different type of
the sector
intelligence.
tried to tell you that it's not. The sector tried to say that it's not only that it's reaching human level intelligence, or it's it's even more intelligent than every human. And I actually posted something on LinkedIn today. I was literally laughing my head off that Hyundai, they made this big press release that they created a dedicated robot for plugging chargers into EVs. And in case it's too hard for you to plug a charger into an EV, right? But of course, everything that, being that it's an AI thing, they had to use the usual stuff that it uses. It is safe. The robot is safe. You can trust it because it uses deep machine learning algorithms to figure out where the hole is in the car. But not only that, they say this is a solution to, I don't know what problem. I'm like, I didn't realize that was it, because I drive an EV and I'm a petrol head. And yeah, it kind of took me a few days to figure out how the EVs work, because it is a bit different as a driving experience. But, sticking a plug into a freaking charging port in a car, that wasn't one of those challenges, No. But it's just that same kind of nonsense. And it's like, and I always challenge the tech bros. I say, look, you're telling me that these things are so smart. Somehow I don't think humans need like deep learning to figure out where to freaking stick a plug into anything. You know what I mean? And but that's the bizarre PR, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, AI has lots of useful use cases. Lots 100%. Of use cases that have, can add real value. There's also, like anything, an ability to dress up absolutely useless things with the lovely flourish that this is part of cutting edge technology, and out comes the corporate manual of buzzwords that we want to throw in this year. And It's like, you know what, Tim? We should just team up, go and create a startup, call it something.ai. We'll easily get kind of at least a few million seed because it's got AI in the title, right? And it's just a branding exercise. Like, I mean, my 10-year-old daughter can plug my EV into charge from my home charger. Quite likes lining it up and going boop. Deep learning indeed, right? Like, I mean, is there a use case for people with disabilities? Maybe, but
you can hire a person to do that, surely. Because somebody actually did make a comment. They said maybe it's to help the elderly or whatever. I'm like, well, yeah, but then the elderly probably would need some kind of help, to get in or get out of the car, right? So what would they use? Would they use another robot for that? But then if you combine the costs of these two things, it's a hell of a lot more expensive than just hiring a person.
There's a use case for everything, Tim. Everything. We can monetize it somehow.
It's nuts. I mean, it is. It's sometimes frustrating, but I find it funny. I like because when I posted about this, I was just basically posted as a joke, like, this is where we're going. But I think the hype is going to explode pretty soon, and the financial consequences are. I can't even think about. Whatever we had in the financial crash in 2008, it's probably nothing compared to what's coming. I mean, it's absolutely horrendous.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose for those of us that have kind of skirted around this world, we've got consultancies just like, oh yeah, just 10% of our workforce, yeah, off you go. I mean, there's going to be significant economic shifts over the next few years. And the truth is, people have known these things. These things are really quite clear. Like, people knew this. Like, the pandemic muddied things. If anything, the pandemic was interesting because it actually stifled some of the things that were definitely going to happen and has delayed them slightly. But it's also distracted people from what is actually happening. And now people like us are starting to meet people who had very well structured, respected corporate careers. The job market at the minute, there is some massively talented people really struggling to get anything. And that number of people is just gradually growing. And you're seeing them popping up and hearing, oh, wow, have you heard? This person's lost their role. And it's like, all these people are really good. And that means it's a really competitive job market. But the truth is, that ain't changing. Like, it's things are coming. And it's a massive shift that I don't think most people are ready for. But even me talking about this allyship work, about understanding how to work with difference, there's real power in that skill set because it helps you navigate change. It helps you consider transformation. It helps you think about the adaptability of your skill sets. And it gets you realizing that the fundamental skills of allyship are how to work well with difference. The world is changing. The world's going to be different. How do you operate with the world when your operating system isn't plugging in and you can't patch it? And how are you going to update yourself? You're going to have to go and do some uncomfortable stuff. That's what allyship's about, right? It sounds really like people are like, what the hell? I'm like, trust me, if you're running Windows 95, not working very well for you in today's world, is it? Like, it's just not. And even with your Android app on your iPhone, it's not. It's just the compatibility. Things got to change. Technology is going to continue to evolve. You've got to continue to evolve. Or just sit there and let the world happen to you. Do you want to be a master of the technology, or do you want to let technology master you?
Yes.
Choices.
Yeah. But this actually brings me nicely about allyship and Male Allies UK. Because we have listeners who are not based in the UK, so they probably don't know who you are, what work that you do. So can you basically explain what allyship is all about? I mean, obviously in the UK people would know, but just more for the international listeners.
Yeah, so I run an organisation called Male Allies UK. It's kind of come from my own journey of, building a tech company, getting ill, learning to walk again, and then taking a step out of my business and becoming a stay-at-home dad and being in a room full of mothers and grandmothers like, damn, like, what am I missing here? Like, what perspectives have I not heard? What parts of the world have I not seen? And damn, they don't care about caregivers in the UK. But it just made me think about, how that changed how I was as a leader in terms of mitigating risk, noticing opportunities, and just putting myself into other people's shoes while I thought about the choices that I made, how I behaved. And it just made me realize that actually, that curiosity to get to think about different experiences, to think about whose voices are not in the room, to think about what angles you're not considering, actually made me more effective as a business leader, and also made me, interact better, have a better connection with myself, and be more self-aware of the impact that I was having on the world. So now we work with organizations, we bring men and women together, and we create environments where people think about the skills of working with difference, think about how inclusion, how we can make systems, processes, teams more inclusive, so more good stuff gets through. So the barriers for the best talent to get to where it should get to, the barriers are less. Thinking about the roles that we all have in baking that bigger pie together. Because a lot of people think inclusion is going to take away from them. Some people feel that inclusion is not a priority. But actually, when it's done well, it creates better business outcomes. It creates better skills that people have to work together. It creates more collaboration, more innovation opportunity. End of the day, just makes business sense. But also benefits you as an individual when you go on that journey. And I found that, and for our research, we've seen that men have gained a lot of benefits from just building those allyship skills and going on that journey. And, we work, speaking and really demystifying this in the business world across a whole range of different industries and across different territories as well. Our research kind of looks at what the barriers are, what stops people stepping in, but also provides some solutions for that. Looks at what people think it is, challenges some of those myths and misconceptions. We do a lot of work around what are the benefits, what's in it for you when you go on this journey. What does it look like in terms of practical action? We also create spaces for men to come and say what they want about inclusion so we can explore it in a non-judgmental environment, get some curiosity in there. And we consult around how to engage more men, because a lot of inclusion campaigns, a lot of inclusion work, there's a lot of celebrations, a lot of parties, flags, food, fun. Doesn't make systemic change for people in the workplace, doesn't really change cultures. We actually look what does, and how can some of that work that actually makes a change for people be the thing that you do. So we also look at how to engage men, because a lot of inclusion work hasn't technically marketed itself or centered men in those comms, in those constructions. And I think inclusion, end of the day, it's about everyone. But I'm really passionate about closing some of the gender gaps that exist. Because if we close those gaps, we make the world a better place. People can really be who they are. And people have the autonomy to choose. You can go and be a stay-at-home dad. Or you can work 80 hours a week. But it's your choice. You can get flexibility there. As a woman, you can go and build a career. You can have children. You can have a choice rather than you have to be a certain way based on who you are as a gender. That frustrates me, because those stereotypes that play a role in shaping who we are from so young, they stop people being who they are. And if people are who they are, they can bring the talents, bring the skills, do things that resonate with them, and actually come together and use the difference that we have as humans as our advantage. Because it's in our differences that we have advantage. And our work is non-preachy, gets people to explore, gets people to really think about what's going to drive them to do this, to build these skills, and makes it relevant for people. So, yeah, it's a bit about our work, and obviously the work in the corporate space forms work with boys in schools. And work with boys in schools, incredibly passionate about creating the spaces for boys to work on that digital literacy, that critical thinking, that understanding who they are, what their values are, who they can be, and getting them to really think about the world that they navigate today, but also listening so we understand how we can continue to guide them through not an adult lens, but a lens that's relevant to them, and understand what are they using, how are they feeling, what's going on for them, what are their concerns, what do they see for the future. So that's what we do. And while we are called Essentialise UK, we work with clients in Australia, America, Canada, and Asia Pacific as well. The only clients that we've not had any clients in South America yet. So if any of you listening, we've got some interesting cultural stuff that we'd love to do some work with you on. So yeah, get in contact.
Well, as usual, the links are in the description, as always. But I see everything that you said. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but feel free to correct me, because there are loads of schemes like that, corporate level schemes for years, for equality, for obviously the DEI, etc. Yet, have they basically failed? Because if you found such gaps within these organizations, I mean, what went wrong? Because the way I see it, obviously, it's great that, from the business perspective, right? It's great that there is a market for what you're doing. But at the same time, just as a thought in my mind, the fact that there's still a market for what you're doing, does that mean that the current schemes have failed? Because they should have basically done everything that you just said. No, apparently they haven't. Or they haven't, incomplete.
It's a great question, Tim. I think anything like this is a journey, because the world is continually changing outside. So you can't just kind of do this as a certification and then you're done. You've got to continue to actively practice the skills in a dynamically changing world. In terms of the provision of this stuff, it's been very, very varied. There's been some really, really good stuff been delivered that's actually made impactful change, changed behaviours, changed cultures, changed structures, and actually has a legacy. Some of this work has been, like I said earlier, a slap round the head. You've got some buyers, do it better, which don't create really much change. It's been a lot of activity. I mean, especially, we can be honest, since George Floyd, a lot of companies were like, we need to do something. Some companies have built stuff on sand. They haven't put the foundations in place. They haven't really gone down to that granular level and found out what's it like for people working here and what would be helpful for them. They've just rushed into solutions. And the truth is, anything, whether it is, DEI, or whether it's a marketing campaign, or whether it's a kind of a finance efficiency model, or even whether it's a piece of technology or a transformation. If you rush into it and you haven't done the fundamentals and you haven't got some enough tangible insight to understand what you're trying to solve, what you're trying to achieve, what the current challenges are, how we're going to overcome them. If you don't do that at the start, you're destined to fail because you don't know where you're going, you don't know where you're starting, and the pathway isn't going to be clear. So the truth is, a lot of work over the past 5 years, there's been a rush to do stuff. Some businesses have done stuff to just look like they're doing stuff. That doesn't create long-lasting transformation and change. It just creates cynicism. And also, this work is nuanced. We do live in this world where, we all have different parts of our identity. And what's really interesting is, when I think about our allyship work, a lot of it has focused on men, because historically, men have just been less likely to engage in this. Variety of different reasons. But the truth is, when we're talking about working well with difference in terms of allyship, we're not necessarily talking about allying to someone who's different to you from an identity perspective. We're actually talking about, how do you work with someone in a different department who's doing a completely different job? That's difference. How do you ally to someone who's outside of your industry, a client who's working with you? How do you work with them, realizing that you might have very different ways of working, different ways of operating, different cultural beliefs, but you're working with them? So it's, how do you work well with difference? And that's not always about people's identities. Quite often about how people operate, their backgrounds, the ways that they work. And that is the core aspect, because any workplace, you are going to work with people who are different.
Yes.
And yet, as humans, we've actually started to get scared of difference. And that's
why is that, do you think? Where did that come from?
I'll be brutally honest, Tim. Social media is a polarization engine, and that drives people to fear difference, because the confirmation bias of being funneled algorithmically into people who see the world the same way as you gives you this really kind of affirming idea that there's lots of people like me. And all of a sudden, that's a community. That's a community of people who agree and like the things the same way that I do. Community used to mean all the people you live with on your street who were all different ages, different thoughts, different backgrounds. But that was a community, a group of different people who had some things in common. It might have been your church congregation. It might have been all the kids who went to the youth group together. That was a community. Now, a community is an online group of people who all believe the same thing, so it's easy to sell them shit.
Yeah.
Community has completely changed. And that's a problem, because communities of different people used to sit down, talk, appreciate some difference, find the commonality, and find ways to be united if they were going to cause some problems on the street, and they'd all come out and help and sit down and have some tea party. Now, people are all online in the community. If anyone says something that they don't agree, they get kicked out of the community.
Yeah.
And there's no space to debate or to challenge. And those communities all sit in bubbles. And algorithmically, that's good, because
it sells ads.
Resonate. These people resonate, so they'll keep going. And then they're easy to target because they're so honed on why that community exists. What's really interesting is that keeps engagement and keeps a platform sticky.
Yeah.
What also keeps a platform sticky is floating in some content from a very different group. Because you'll engage on that and you'll get triggered because it's so different than what you've been used to. And you'll engage on that saying, how can you believe that? That's wrong. And that keeps you on the platform, arguing with people as well. So the whole thing is, if we can keep you on the platform, either talking to people who believe exactly the same thing or arguing with people who believe something very, very different, we'll keep you here, keep garnering your data, get more ad revenue because we can just show you more and we know exactly what's going to make you feel some level of emotion. And then we'll win. But you will almost imagine that the world exists of people who think like me and people who think these horrible things, when actually almost everyone else is in the middle, like the community on your street. So that's a real challenge for young people who've not had that community on the street.
Yeah.
As an entrepreneur, I like to follow the news really, really closely, be it in politics, the environment, health, fitness, and of course AI, which is my field of work. But the problem with the news sector today, that staying up to date with events around the world can be really, really difficult because it's impossible to consult a single source for the full story. The narratives that shape public opinion often just reinforce media and corporate-backed vested interest, and of course they push for whatever public or political biases of their readers. Not to mention, of course, they push a lot of clickbait stories to just attract clicks rather than trying to inform you properly. And this is why I fell in love with Ground News. Ground News is an app and website that combines news from around the world in one place so you can compare coverage. For every news source, you can see if they have political bias, how reliable their reporting is, and who owns them. And they've got this amazing tool called the blind spot feed, which highlights news disproportionately covered by one side of the political spectrum. I even see this with AI. For example, you'll see the left-leaning AI coverage tend to be kind of very doom and gloom. But then on the other side, with the right-leaning, AI is the savior of humanity and everything. I mean, it's quite ridiculous in both cases. So it's so important to have a tool like Blind Spot because it shows you the balance of this coverage so that you can actually see what the real story is, what's the crux of the story, which is super important, especially for somebody like me, because many customers around the world rely on me and my team to make sure that we inform them about AI and technology as accurately as we possibly can. But even for me personally, as somebody that likes to follow all the other stories, I want to make sure that my cognitive bias is in check. So check out this tool, it's absolutely phenomenal. You can subscribe through my link at ceoretort.com/ground news, one word, or scan the QR code that you can see on the screen right now if you're watching on YouTube or Spotify, and you'll get 40% of their Vantage plan. It's the one that I use to get unlimited access to every single feature and tool that they have, and it works out less than $5 a month. It's basically like a cup of coffee a month. And your subscription not only helps our channel and our podcast, but it also supports Ground News as it makes the media landscape more transparent. They're not reliant on VCs, kind of like my company. They are absolutely 100% funded by their membership. So this is something that I really, really love about them as well. It's their level of independence. And I think we should all support companies like that to make sure that we stay informed as accurately as we possibly can. So check out the link at ceoretort.com/ground news, one word, or scan the QR code that you can see on the screen right now if you're watching on YouTube or Spotify, and you'll get 40% of their Vantage plan. And tell me what you think. Do you like it? Is it working for you? I would love to get your feedback. So thank you, Ground News, for supporting this video.
In one of the episodes, I talked about my personal experience because I was in a dark period as a teenager as well. And I did say there, if something like the manosphere existed then, I mean, I am honest to say, I think I probably would have joined. The one thing that would have made me very uncomfortable is the way they treat women. I mean, I always had issues in terms of how I lived in the Middle East, so I've seen how they mistreated women. In fact, I've seen, abuse in my family against women, so that kind of is a touchy subject for me. So maybe Andrew Tate would not have worked with me because I'm like, okay, man, you're showing a lot of violence against women, and that's something I just can't accept. But there are other people who don't realize that there are other communities within the manosphere that it's not about necessarily anti-women, but it is, it's that this sort of isolationist approach to say, hey, we are, that brotherhood, we are doing whatever we're doing. I mean, even, for example, even Islamic terrorism is a form of that. I mean, and in fact, when I lived in the Middle East, this is when Islamic terrorism was emerging. And guess what was the problem? Basically, young boys, totally isolated from society, mostly from very, very poor backgrounds. So they didn't have access to all the posh clubs or whatever, which is the only thing that was available to people. And where could they go? Oh, some dodgy mosques and dodgy madrasas or whatever to teach them that brotherhood against whatever it is that they basically fighting against. So it is a serious problem, and kind of going back to what we talked about earlier about the importance of having physical spaces. My concern is that where we're moving towards right now, most likely towards another major financial calamity, we're going to lose more physical spaces, and there'll be more isolation, more anger, more segregation. So, this is why I'm just wondering, how could we as a society, I mean, is it right to say that it's purely the fault of social media companies? I mean, surely we as a society kind of failed as well, didn't we?
Yeah, I mean, social media definitely amplifies things.
Yes.
Because there's just lack of trust in society. The truth is, Tim, it just goes to the fact that kids nowadays are looking and thinking, I'm not going to be able to buy a house. Unless my parents are rich,
yeah,
I'm not going to be able to buy a house. The salaries that I can get in a typical job, the amount of debt I get from education, they're just looking at life and thinking, it's a game you can't win.
Yeah.
And that just creates so much like, what's the point? I'm just gonna reject all this. And they just see stuff. Politicians, claiming expenses when they shouldn't be. Like celebs in scandals here and there. People who are rich not paying tax. So they just look at all this stuff and they're like, why the hell should I give a crap about making things? It's really quite dystopian for young people. Yeah. And it's massively frustrating because the inequity is increasing across the world, and that's really problematic because as soon as you get disenfranchised, you're vulnerable to online influences, and you go looking for some answers or some clarity. And I'll be honest, Tim, like when I was 31, so about 10 years ago, obviously I'd been unwell, I had to learn to walk again, and I turned 30. And I fell into the manosphere. And people would be like, what? You're fairly intelligently, do all this work now? I fell into it. And I fell into it through the most comical of ways, right? I searched online for, I'm like things I should do now I'm 30. So I searched that on Google, right? And landed on a few different websites which were like, in your 30s, you should do all these things as a man. And I was like, oh, yeah, it's interesting. Just read through these things and kind of like think, oh, well, yeah, maybe I should go get a collection of belts. Oh, wow. Lots of it was typical stuff around wardrobe, fitness, all the stuff that you find on those listicle things, right?
Yeah.
And then I went into the algorithm for that kind of stuff. So I ended up on a website called Bold and Determined, which was part of the kind of the manosphere area of men going your own way. So it was about that kind of self-sufficiency. It was an American guy who'd moved out to Vietnam and was living a self-sufficient life. But he was also very much focused on fitness and rejecting Western women and stuff like that. And you read, and most of it kind of makes some sense when you're a bit like, I'm kind of exploring the next chapter. And then I ended up buying a few books off Amazon in this kind of area, Guerrilla Mindset, the kind of the Art of Man, and then The Rational Male. And I'm reading these books. And at one point I was like, wait a minute, like this book is telling me to divorce my wife. Like, this isn't right. And at that point I kind of thought, wait a minute, like I can see what's happening to me here. But that's because I had some self-awareness to actually think, wait a minute, this book seems to keep telling me. It's telling me lots of stuff about personal development, about being like autonomous, about having discipline, about being committed, about looking after my body and my posture and all these things that make sense. But subtly it keeps telling me that women are taking advantage of men and marriage is a scam. and women will bleed you dry, and feminism has gone to, and it keeps just dropping that in to all the development stuff to a point where I got, wait a minute, I'm sat here, and it keeps telling me that I need to get divorced and just like run off. Like I've got kids, I've got a wife. I don't want to do that, but it just helped me see how easy it would be to drop into that world. And if you're a bit disenfranchised, and if you don't have like a loving partner and some kids and an ecosystem around you, it's selling a romantic dream of like manhood where you're physically fit, you're financially free, you've got all this control and power, and you can do it all and shape every part of your life to the way that you want it to be. And you go your own way. And it's saying the systems that you're in are all against you. And it's a very comforting narrative if you're in a place of struggle. So it really is. Like it kind of tells you, not directly but indirectly, that it's not your fault.
Yeah.
And that actually, but you can grasp hold of something which is taking control and power and being free by rejecting all the things around you and not asking for help, but doing it your own way. So dangerous. But even I ended up in that funnel before gradually pulling myself back out.
I mean, actually, I want to ask you a lot about that, but this is definitely, it's the same narrative of what Andrew Tate is using. I mean, obviously, he's using this infamous term, the matrix. And I have actually listened to some of the videos that he says, and you know what? Actually, he's not wrong. This is the thing about these sort of people, you know, the charlatans, basically, most charlatans in whatever, you know, like be it in politics, be it beyond politics. I mean, Elon Musk is, as far as I'm concerned, one of the biggest tech charlatans in history. But is that they have this amazing ability where they combine real, tangible facts with fiction, right? So effectively, like I would say, maybe 60 to 70% of the statement is factually correct, but then the rest they try to feed in whatever bullshit they fit it in there to basically nudge your brain towards whatever direction they want to nudge you towards. You know what I mean? So yeah, and they are very, very good at that. I mean, this is the dangerous thing. And what worries me is that this is fed into the AI models today, because AI models get trained on all of that content that is being published by the likes of Andrew Tate and, you know, these sort of books, etc. And of course, when young boys, girls, they interact with these things, and actually, I did share quite a lot of posts on this on LinkedIn. Like, I mean, I'm not singling them out, but they're the biggest profile, a company called Character AI, which is backed by Google. And a lot of examples were like that, where basically, again, boys were encouraged to do literally everything that you've highlighted. They've encouraged girls towards things like anorexia, self-harm, even suicide. I mean, all of that is a direct result of the sort of content that we see online that you talked about. So, I mean, it is dangerous. It's a huge concern for me, even as a parent. But you know, the system has failed. Sometimes, I mean, one of the things that we've done with my wife, I mean, we decided that we wanted to take our daughter out of schooling and homeschool her, because even the school itself was actually really, really good. But she's a very creative type individual. I mean, the schooling system doesn't work for her. And there was a point that she basically was suffering from anxiety. She would cry every time I was taking her to school. She would cry, and I'm like, no, I can't take her to school. I'm sorry, I refuse. It's like mental torture to her. And I've seen data that in the UK, at least, that over 100,000 children in the last year basically have been homeschooled so far for that very reason. So, and you know, the system really seems to be becoming more and more incompatible with the world that we live in today somehow as a society. But before we kind of delve into that, because I think this is something that should be discussed. Yeah, I mean, you mentioned that you managed to get yourself out of that manosphere trap. Now, for me, I mentioned that what helped me is the fact that I was involved in sports. So hence, for me, sport was my way out, and in my opinion, still is today. If you've got any kind of sporting club, etc., absolutely go for it. Even if you're not, athletic, it doesn't matter. Just go into a sporting club of any kind, just do something. But what did you do? How, what was the steps that you took to help yourself to get out of that trap, basically?
Yeah, so I think it was obviously a time where I kind of isolated myself a bit. So what happened is I actually got back connected because both my brothers were living in Thailand at that point. I actually went out and visited them. And after spending a week with them, came back and it just really kind of opened my eyes because I missed my family while I was out there. And this idea that, well, you should get rid of them all and just live this life of this kind of solo, kind of roaming character from like a video game, always on the road, never having a home. It just didn't align. And then I just kind of went back into the things that I actually found joy in. And some of that was engaging back in sport again, even though, I was playing disability football and coaching that because I'd obviously, had all the struggles with my walking and stuff. But I think for me, it was just really kind of taking a bit of time to reflect on what was actually meaningful and unplugging from that kind of personal development world and actually kind of going back to just reflecting on the man that I wanted to be and going back on my journey and looking at the past rather than searching externally for answers. I started to look inside myself. And that was a big thing because I think a lot of the reason why that kind of world works is because people are externally searching for answers. And because they're externally searching for answers, you end up with other people telling you what to do. So I actually went back into my own intuition, which was powerful. But you almost have to nudge yourself back into that because it's easy to be taken on other people's narratives. And again, I worked on that over time and been through some adversity, and that did give me some tools to be able to do that. But it did require me to actually step back from it and think, is this who I am, and is this what I want, and am I happy being told these things that I don't agree with? And the answer was no. And that allowed me to kind of think, well, what things are actually keep telling me this message and making me feel this way? And I was only able to do that by taking that step back and reflecting. And that's, I suppose, where critical thinking comes in, right? I started to think, what are they trying to get me to do? And then I started to see, actually, they're trying to get me to throw my life away, go and move to some other country where it's cheaper and where women have different cultural traditions, and then start some kind of online business. Like, probably by selling me a course or something. And I was like, wait, I'm not willing to be monetized like that because that's just not who I am. So yeah, and it's interesting, but I had that life experience before to help me look against that. I had a support network. I had the ability to travel and unplug myself and reflect. That's a privilege. So many other people don't have that. If you don't have a support network, it's so easy to just that become your support network. Other men doing the same thing, other boys in the same position. And if you don't have the space to reflect yourself and you don't have the lived experience and that self-awareness to look, if you look inside yourself and you're like, I don't have any keys to any of the doors inside me, I need to look out there. Like so many, like you would have gone through something similar in adolescence. Pretty much every boy at some point thinks, I have no idea what the man I'm going to become. I just don't know. And I'm looking inside myself. I don't have the emotional intelligence or the self-awareness to understand what's going on in here. Too many hormones, there's too much confusion. So I'm going to look out there. Who looks like me, sounds like me, who understands what I'm going through, who can tell me, who can show me a pathway. And it's at that point that this comforting message of, you know what, boys got it tough now. It's not your fault. But way to get power and control is to, listen to this, get hench, learn how to talk to girls. Let's teach you how to make some money so you can get that nice car and that nice watch, and then you'll be happy. And it's like, you've got that going up against go to university, get good grades, get a profession, get promoted. And it's so easy for them to say, that's the old system, because that ain't going to work for you. And the truth is, it's not worked for many of our generation.
Exactly. I was about to say, I mean, my wife and I actually had this conversation the other day. It's like we were very fortunate. We became entrepreneurs like in 2001. So we're not talking about a lifetime. Well, actually, maybe it is almost a lifetime. It's like almost 25 years ago. Well, that's just about. And but basically, in those days, it was so easy for us. Even at the time, I remember we used to complain like, oh, it was so hard for us to buy a house at that time because the baby boomers, like our parents, could buy a house for like £20,000 or something. You know, but even then, there was enough money and support for entrepreneurs. So basically, we wanted to start our own business. We were recent graduates, no money or anything like that. So guess what? We could just go down the road to a bank and borrow some money. It was just easy. It's like, okay, yeah, you want to start a business? Well done. Here's some £5,000. All right, cool. Let's start. It was like, it's easy. So the system allowed us to build the wealth that made us comfortable by the time we were like 28. And that was we made that decision that we wanted to have children. We're already married. Like we've been together for a long time. We're sort of as a young couple. We wanted to have, buy our first house and stuff like that. All of that, we're still around 28. And I'm thinking to myself, today, I'm seeing people, like, I swear, what was it? Was it like on one of the radio shows, like James O'Brien or something? Somebody said that they bought their first house when they were in their late 40s, my age.
Yep.
And I thought to myself, man, this is, to me, that is disgusting for society. I mean, and the thing that gets really, like, I could tell I'm getting riled up right now, but it's the fact when I see the older generation attacking the Gen Zers, saying that they're, oh, look at them, they're so lazy. Back in the day, we worked hard and bought a house. I was like, motherfucker, what are you talking about? Back in the day, all it took is just one person in your household to work, and you could buy a house for like 20 grand, and that would be it. Nowadays, you get two couples, or rather, two people in a couple, rather, working full time. They can't even afford the childcare, let alone a house. What are we doing? What are we doing?
But the thing is, Tim, if you've been a beneficiary of that, it's actually quite hard to rationalize that you didn't work hard for that. So I've had this lovely conversation with my own parents. So my parents are not, they had me when I was a teenager, so they're not that much older. They're literally 60 and 58. So, but they are the generation who bought their first property in the 1990s.
Yeah.
So they're we got hit with massive, 14% interest rates, and wow, that almost bankrupted us. But then we bought a house in 2007, and then in a house in 97, and sold it in 2008 for 3 times more than they bought it for. And that 3 times increase in equity, they didn't work for that. It just inflated in 10 years, and the bubble of housing, and anyone who owned property at that time, 3 times. In some places it went up by 5 times, in some places it went up by 10 times.
I know people who became millionaires purely because they sold a house. That's it. They didn't create a company, they didn't do anything. Literally, they had a house that was worth a few £1 million, and that was it. They became millionaires.
And the reality is, Tim, if you've been a beneficiary of that, sometimes you see your hard work and sacrifice to buy the house. You don't see the fact that it literally give you a wage every year in inflation that you didn't work for. And then you own an asset which put you in a position of power.
Yes.
And give you an ability to finance against that to do other stuff, to create more opportunities. You could leverage against the equity on that house to go and invest, where no doubt you probably got better returns than anywhere else. You just had options. Whereas young people, but young people buy too many coffees and they have a mobile phone contract. And you know what? On one side, Tim, if you're a young person who doesn't really consider, so I'm a working class background, I really resent the idea that I have to pay £4 for some warm milk in a cup. And I'll make my own where I can. But I'm not going to kill myself and not occasionally do that. Now, if every single day you're buying a coffee and a takeaway sandwich, and you are spending quite a bit of money on things you could potentially do yourself, over 10 years, that will add up to maybe 45, 50 grand.
Yeah. And it's not good for your health. And it's actually bad for your health as well. It's not healthy stuff.
No. So if you do spend willy-nilly over 10 years, technically you could have saved that, lived more frugally. The trouble is that 45 grand will be eaten into by inflation.
Exactly.
And the continuing asset. And the truth is that people are like, that 45 grand could be a housing deposit that you spent on coffee and bagels and croissants.
Not in 10 years.
But not in 10 years. So it's just, it looks like a plausible argument. And yeah, they would have more money. But where the price of some houses is just unattainable. And that's where we're now in this generational position, Tim, where if your parents are wealthy, then you can go and work that internship and not have to pay. And hell, they might have a second house close by where you can live in, and you don't have to pay rent. And, both in terms of wealth and connections, if your parents are well connected and they're wealthy, your life chances are so much higher than the kids of parents who, still wrapped up in their own mortgage and struggling to get by, because the opportunities are scarce for you, and that ability to network and just live, because as that kid, you're working to keep yourself going.
Yeah.
And all the hours you spend working that junior job just to get by, you're not out there networking or finding big opportunities or spending time on your side hustle that might become a business, because you're busy just surviving.
Yeah.
And that's a massive
You're not living.
gap.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not a meritocracy, it's like an inheritocracy.
Yeah. Well, actually, I saw an interesting report, was it last year, that was published by Bank of America, where they basically said every single billionaire or somebody whose net worth in the hundreds of millions of dollars, who is our age, so I'm late 40 or early 40, so basically people within that age range and younger, it's all inherited wealth.
Yeah.
So that myth that, you young people are so lazy, well, how come that person is young and is a millionaire? Yeah, they got it from their parents. And that's the thing. And they looked at the global. This is not just in the USA. So this is the global picture. So because they looked at, I think they looked at all of these, millionaire lists that, in Financial Times or whatever. And they basically found that the vast majority, if not every single person our age and younger, who has sort of hundreds of millions or billions worth of cash, it's all inherited. None of them work for it. So this idea that you can now build wealth like the way we could do it 20 years ago beyond, that's bullshit. You can't. You could get lucky, for sure, but it's not easy. It's like I said, I am talented. I'm very good at what I do, but I do not believe I could do today what I could do 20 years ago, 25 years ago. I don't believe I can.
No.
And for me, that's not fair. That's horrible.
Yeah, and I think that unfairness sits with us, and the reality that we're sold this world that technology would actually give more opportunities for people to set up digital businesses and make money from nothing, and it would level a playing field. But actually, we look at how data has been harvested and where the ad revenues go and who's got control.
Yeah.
Now we're in a place where the world's inflated, but we think about the 200 wealthiest entities on the planet, less than 50 are nations. It's now organisations and individual people who hold massive amounts of financial resource and everything that comes with that. And that gives them innumerable power over shaping and influencing the way that we go as a species, right? That's scary. But also, these individuals are quite often held up as self-made people. They're self-made from the parents' own money. That give them so much opportunity and so much backing. But they're really good at the narrative starting from a garage somewhere or having to eat crumbs from behind a sofa in the early days when it was so tough. And they are masters of, the backstory of, I had it really hard. I mean, even when Rishi said, "Oh, well, I had to buy a Greggs with a credit card once," I didn't have Sky TV. I mean, he didn't do a very good job of it. But I'm a person of the people. Let me use my tech to exploit you and create more inequality. I try not to be cynical about it, but you have to be realistic about it at the same time.
Yeah. I mean, like Elon Musk. I mean, he's actually one of those, isn't he? Like, he's like, "Oh, look at me! I slept on the floor and blah blah blah." So yeah, and for people who don't understand history or know history of South Africa, if you're white in South Africa during the apartheid, you were very privileged. You had, I mean, I know what his father had. He owns, what was it again? Like, was it
Emerald Mine?
Emerald Mine. Yeah. Oh yeah, that's so poor, isn't it? It's bizarre, but people fall for it. This shit is it again, and it is going back to that idea that I mentioned earlier about how they have this pretty. I mean, you got to give him that. I mean, Trump is exactly the same, actually, isn't he? He's like, he goes on about, actually, no, I'm all self-made. My daddy just gave me some money. Just he lent me some money. Some money being, what was it, $400 million? Like, I wish my daddy could give me $400 million. Like, why not? But yet, they kind of they push this message, which again, it makes sense generally speaking in terms of like, how it is important to work hard and believe in yourself and yada yada yada. Yes. But you can't just bullshit people and say, well, actually, I started from nothing, when actually you had a massive step above and beyond 99% of the global population to put you in the position that you're in.
Yeah, the best thing is the social media posts about it. Well, I created a 9-figure business. I started with nothing. No employees, no understanding, no consideration, no network. But I did have 9 million seed funding from my dad. And it's always like I'm self-made, like blah 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 blah. But actually, I'm the CEO of a fintech at 21. I didn't go to university. I didn't go to college. I haven't got Goldman Sachs on my CV. But my dad owns a company. And it's just like they even wanted to humble brag about it. But no, it's just the sad reality is it's selling a dream.
Yes,
it sells a dream that causes young people to take risks that then ends up in a bad place. They end up disenfranchised and then end up unhappy and searching for validation, which puts them into someone else's loop, who's then going to exploit them again. But it's this continued exploitation of people. And yeah, as humans, we have agency, right? We have the ability to make our decisions. We do need to take accountability and ownership of our actions. But it's just, the world is a messy place. And, you need to walk around with your eyes open just to see exactly what's happening. And it's not always that easy to see. There's a lot of stuff that's dressed up nice on the front end. It's hella messy on the back.
Yeah.
But you know what, Tim? When we challenge those very systems, like we do on our shows, on our platforms, we're giving people an opportunity to just break and nudge that thinking. And what's really interesting is we're sat here saying the system's broken, right? That's exactly the same thing that manosphere influencers say. They also say the system's broken. And the way to unplug from that matrix is to regain your power, regain control, exploit others, make money, get strong, and just dominate. Actually, when they're saying the system's broken, they're right.
Yeah.
The system ain't serving many people at all. But actually, there are different pathways to work when the system's not very equitable. And part of that is coming together and working to make those systems better for people. We think all the way back to the start when we said, you know what, if you create an environment that's inclusive, it benefits everyone. And we are actively working to show that there are pathways that we can go on, not just on ourselves, but with other people, to actually work to make those systems more equitable. And that will benefit everyone. even those people who think this stuff works against them. Because the truth is the systems are broken, and there's only a small handful of people benefiting from how things currently are.
What would be the strategy to do that, do you reckon? Because I get a little bit frustrated. Actually, I had a conversation with somebody yesterday that sometimes I can be a little bit abrasive with my approach. I mean, I'm kind of learning because I've been doing this for at the time of the recording of this video, it's just barely 6 months. So I'm still kind of a noob at all these things. I was basically in the tech bubble pretty much for 20 years. And I just managed to get myself out of it so I can inform people about, the realities of tech and AI, basically everything that we're talking about. But sometimes I get really frustrated when I see online, people that comment on my posts, especially on LinkedIn. I mean, I don't do the other social networks. It's just filled up with weirdos. I mean, filled up with bots, basically, like that try to basically rile up people, as you said. LinkedIn is kind of more or less clean compared to the others. But even then, when I post anything in relation to the points and the issues that we've discussed, I always get individuals, mostly men, like 99.9% of the time is men, that complain that I am trying to be a white knight, that I'm just, focusing on women, but not men, and men are the victims and blah, blah, blah. And I sometimes I try to engage. They refuse to engage. Sometimes I get a bit riled up. And amazingly, my following is exploding on LinkedIn because people seem to like the idea that I'm being as abrasive. Now, I'm not abrasive because I'm trying to be horrible, but I just sometimes, using the martial arts analogy, it's like, I never look for a fight. I do not want to fight. Quite the opposite. I stay away from fights. I try to avoid it and try to even basically, if something is about to happen, I always try to stop it from happening. But unfortunately, sometimes things do happen. I have to throw the punch. So my question is, because obviously you've done this properly for a long time. For those of us, because obviously I'm a noob, I know there are other people that basically they want to speak out as well, and they kind of trying to figure out should we ever throw a punch? Should we be compassionate towards the cons? Because part of me says yes, but the other part, and this is actually to do with the work that I've done since early 2010s with AI, where we started to actually, we discovered the whole rise of misinformation online. And effectively, interestingly, we used AI to try and fight it, building language models at the time. And we basically noticed that people started to focus more on grifters rather than experts. Hence, Michael Gove here infamously said, we don't need to listen to experts anymore. And he basically he knew that was the right moment to say that, because that wasn't, because people blame him and say, oh, he said it, so it's his fault. Oh, no. That was building up to that. I mean, the 2010s, I literally said that the 2010s was the period, the decade where the grifters were given power and legitimacy, right? And so so for me, I feel like, okay, if you were conned by these grifters back then, we are literally seeing the consequences of their con. Yet now, people still voted for Trump. People still want somebody like Nigel Farage to be prime minister. And I'm thinking to myself, well, I'm sorry. I don't feel I can be compassionate with you anymore. Because it didn't work, did it? Yeah. So I'm thinking, do you see my point? So we were compassionate. It didn't work. Now shit hit the fan big time. People that voted for Trump the second time, I mean, now they're regretting it, but they've been warned. It's not like they didn't know. Even me, I don't know shit about politics, but I even made 2 episodes well before his election, basically saying, look, this is what's going to happen if you vote for this guy. And it's happening, right? The writing was on the wall. So how there you go. You can educate me now, right? How can I not be aggressive? Because sometimes, like I said, I feel like, I can't be compassionate. I want to be compassionate. I really do. But Jesus, you still voted for Trump, for fuck's sake. Yeah, and you're complaining that things are getting worse. Well, I'm sorry. What do you want me to do about it? You see what I mean? So how do you deal with that?
Yeah, there's so many different parts of that same. I think first to be said in this is actually to pick your battles.
Yeah.
Like, we only have so much energy to incite change, and I found that actually sitting down with people and listening to them, you realise that lots of people who make very questionable decisions haven't really considered the consequences, or actually struggling in their own life.
Mm.
And they're making decisions out of desperation, or decisions out of, really lacking a wider perspective on things. And, Trump's effective, Farage is effective because they do this single issue politics. They put Barnum effect statements out like, make America great again. What is great America? It's what you think it is. We will fix it. Fix what? What you think is a problem. So it's very, very effective. They got Brexit through by saying 350 mil to the NHS for people who care, fishing subsidies cut for people whose livelihoods rely around that. Agriculture will take all that money back. All the farming community were like, yeah, we'll have some of that. Pick issues people are passionate about. Immigration, obviously, for anyone who's out of a job or, is worried about how things have changed within the places where they live, and they've got a lot of negative messaging. It just reinforces that. And then it makes it a compelling choice to pick the non-traditional, non-system candidate.
But they're not non-traditional anymore, though. That's the thing. See, in 2016, I would have said yes, but now they're not. I mean, they have a track record, and their track record is failure. Yet people still go after them. That's what I'm saying. It's like,
because they've gone from non-traditional to popularist.
right.
And now it's actually popular to be the one who's saying, they're all rubbish, don't trust him. Old, creaky Joe Biden, don't trust Keir Starmer, he's bent. It's not about what you do anymore. It's not about your policy or your manifesto. It's about saying the other side is crap. And that's a sad place that we're in. So for me, it's like, doing that online is very difficult because, again, the way the algorithms work, it's just designed to incite people. And truth be honest, people just anonymize and depersonalize online, even on LinkedIn with the bloody face and job title, still saying things where you're like, whoa, you would not say that in a room of people.
If you're the CEO of some corporate or whatever, right?
And it's just like, wow, okay. But then you actually meet people who feel these things, who see these things. And if you sit down and listen to them, you actually see that the beliefs come from somewhere. And while you don't necessarily have to sit there and validate what they say, if you listen with curiosity, you can actually challenge in a way, because most of these people just feel like they're not being heard. At the end of the day, Tim, these people are being oppressed by the system, right?
Yeah.
They don't see it. So their anger channels out into something they feel that is valid for them to throw anger around. So much of our work is about creating those spaces where people can come together and realise, wait a minute, you're never going to see the world the same way. You're just not. But actually, how do you work together? Because you're going to have to work with people who are different. You're not just going to have your little Instagram army following you around in the workplace to back you up every time you say something stupid. It might work like that online. It doesn't work like that in real life. So we do. Like, I try to be tolerant, but I'm not tolerant of continuous intolerance. And I'm not going on a big ass thread online, spending the energy that I can use in a room with people to get them to understand who they are better and how better to navigate this world, arguing with someone online who I've never met. It's choosing that battle. And some people, they reach out, they're curious, they're a bit like, don't believe what you're saying, don't believe that's right. But they're actively questioning rather than just putting, don't believe you. You kind of almost know the people you're never going to get a conversation out of because they don't want to hear it. They just want to splurge out what they think. And you almost get to know the type of people, the ones who are and the ones who are just there to have a good old mourn. Because if there's one thing that social media has taught us about a species, it's that people love a good old whinge about something.
Yes. And
social media is just, there's just threads and threads of threads of people mourning.
And ironically, mostly men. I've seen more men moaning. So they say that women are the ones that moan a lot. Actually,
it's just
not really.
grumpy ass men who are not happy with the outcomes and they expected the world to be a certain way. And now we're in a place where that headline came out this week. I think it was like 36% of white men feel that they're being excluded and not listened to and not considered. And truth be told, Tim, that's how they feel.
Yeah.
That's how they feel. I'm not here to argue with how they feel. But
there's got to be a reason, obviously. Like that feeling wouldn't come out in a vacuum, basically, would it?
No, and that's how they feel. But I would have that conversation and say, that's how you feel. But if you think about other people in other demographics, hell, they feel that as well. And not just you. Actually, there's a lot of people who feel that they're not being listened to, not being heard, and not getting the opportunities they should do. It's easy to just look at one thing, like you said, in isolation. So, to be honest, Tim, you keep doing what you're doing. Like, I like to poke the bear, right? I poke the bear. The truth is, as a man, I can poke the bear and I get less pushback than if I was a woman saying or doing the same thing.
Yes.
But for me, that's a privilege. Because I ain't getting death and rape threats. I'm just getting people mourning at me. And I can. That's a worthwhile trade-off. Because if they're mourning, they care enough to have a mourn. And that's better than the people who say nothing.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, I because I'm part of this LinkedIn program that apparently, which I didn't know they had, that they notice influencers who are rising, and they basically, the editorial team, they try to help you out basically with office hours and that sort of thing to basically figure out how do you basically manage a community properly, right? And things like that, which is great. But I had a bit of a moan at them yesterday in the office hours because, as you said, being a man, it's a lot easier for me to poke at the bear and I can take it, right? And for some reason, still people like look at my face and they're like, "Oh, you look scary." I'm like, "Okay, why?" I'm friendly, honestly. But anyway, but I get a lot of DMs from women who basically ask me, "Tim, if you don't mind, I really want to say this, but I am actually, I just not feel comfortable because I always get attacked on and that's LinkedIn, by the way. We're not talking about X.
Yeah,
I get attacked. One woman actually told me that somebody stalked her from LinkedIn because she said something about white men, and I'm like, wow.
It happens.
So it's a reality. Like I said, I was aware, but I didn't realize it was this bad until I started doing what I'm doing, because they literally email me and they, DM me and stuff like that, which to me it's such a heartbreak. As a father, I've got a daughter, and I'm like, I don't want her to grow up in a world like this where she's scared to speak out about whatever. I mean, what happened to freedom of speech? But women, like you said, if they say something, the sort of trolling they get, it's pretty horrific compared to what we dudes get,
Yes. Yeah, and it's just using that privilege, Tim, because it does happen. Like, I used to speak to so many women who, lots of things happen, and some women end up having to come off because of the amount of trolling.
Yeah.
Some women who are very vocal actually have to hire their own security just because of people turn up at their house. It's like, it's crazy. But the truth is, a lot of these things that happen to women, it's hard to get them addressed. They're trying to get someone, to understand what it's like to be stalked online is really quite hard. Unless it's happened to you, you don't necessarily see or kind of appreciate exactly how impactful it can be. And it's not that's gender specific. It happens both ways.
Absolutely.
But many of these things online, there is an impact of constantly being hassled online in a negative way for just trying to express the truth of your reality. And I think that's why I'm really passionate about creating spaces and getting people to consider, well, what are you not thinking about? And actually, why do you feel entitled to say things that can hurt and harm other people? It's just, sometimes people really just don't consider the impact of their actions. And that is something that people should have autonomy and consideration over, because everything that we do in the online world has an action. And the truth is, everything we do on the online world also leaves a footprint.
Yeah. Is there
Consequences.
is there a common reason why men do what they do online, in terms of why they stalk women? Why do they feel entitled in this way? Because obviously, I mean, could it be cultural? Because obviously, we see, unfortunately, in the right wing, they say, oh, Middle Eastern men are all like that, despite the fact that statistically speaking, right? Peter, like, actually, what is it? If you're a 40-something-year-old white man, you're 80% more likely to be a pedophile than anyone else. Which is, again, I don't like these sort of statistics, but but statistically speaking, all the pedophiles that were caught were basically 40-something-year-old white men. But of course, the political narrative pushed by the likes of the Farages or whatever, no, it's all the Middle Eastern men or whatever, because it's all their cultural thing, whatever. But from your experience, obviously that's all bullshit as far as I'm concerned. But from your experience, because obviously you spoke, you had, open discussions with men and with, within businesses and in other settings. Is there a common reason why so many men do what they do, basically?
There isn't a common reason, Tim. It's proper multifaceted, right? But so there is that entitlement that comes from some men fundamentally thinking that men sit above women in a hierarchy. So
where did they get this information? Is that from parents, from school, culture? What's the reason?
It comes from so many different signals from being a young age. If you think about gender stereotypes put men above women, put boys above girls.
Mm.
And if you operate in that system where technically you are here and women are here, you feel entitled to give feedback and not be pushed back against, because it's like a hierarchy at work.
Yeah.
So you can criticize, but you don't like being challenged back. There's so many other things around feeling like online. You're like anonymous, like your crew will come and back you up. Your little kind of crew of cronies that are people who believe the same thing as you. So they'll come and challenge if you get challenged. So you feel more emboldened to say stuff. We're in a place now where some men are like, well, if Elon Musk says it, then I can do it too. And they're like, he's not going to care if he gets sued, but if you lose your job, you're not paying your bills, are you? Like, but that feeling of, wow, they can do it, so can I. That social proof. Problem is, it's not starting from the same place, is it?
Mm.
And so much of it just comes down to this idea that men should have the world the way that it is. We are sold this idea that we can all be a Prince Charming and ride in, live happily ever after, and
save the women from whatever.
Yeah, and have the lives that we have. Superheroes. We grew up on comics and cartoons on the few channels that we had, where men were these stoic characters who came in, flew in, saved the town, didn't say much, never cried. The sidekicks were a bit more emotionally intelligent. They always died. So,
or it's Robin.
Yeah. Yeah, the sidekicks were always a bit more emotionally intelligent, a bit more like switched on, a bit more like in tune with themselves, but they always were the ones to die.
Yeah.
So we grew up with this idea that we were going to be like a main character in our own story. And then you kind of grow up and realize you're just a tiny little dot on a massive, massive piece of paper. And just when you feel insignificant, or you feel insecure, or you feel like you're being rejected, you almost look to kick out to people beneath you.
Mm.
If I'm getting kicked by the system, I'm going to kick someone below me. And the problem is, a lot of men kick out at women, saying, I'm being damaged by the system, I can't afford to live the way that I want to, I've not got any control, I'm seeing all this stuff around the world that's happening for women, and it's getting better for them, and it's getting worse for men, and that's their fault, so I'm going to hate women and go and be an absolute arse. And that's problematic because they're channeling the anger instead of channeling it into making their own life better, instead of channeling it into working with other people to make the system better, they channel that anger against a group of people who don't need to have anger channeled at them because their lives are hard enough as it is. And it's just sad because there's a lot of stuff that says, oh, well, men are just how they are, men are just wired this way. But actually, so much stuff around how men and women are is nurture. It's shaped by social and environmental norms, by gender stereotypes that are just placed upon us, by the way we're brought up, by the cultures we're surrounded in. Like, actually, men and women are not that different. And the differences that we do have are really useful when we bring them together. But this idea that we're completely different beings is an assertion that sometimes lets men just be how they are because they're so different. When actually we should be looking at the commonalities, using our differences together, and just working together. Like, goddamn, like, use that anger and channel it for better, and the world will be a better place. But it's the entitlement. Men don't like getting rejected by women. Some men feel entitled to comment on women's appearances, to comment on women's perspectives. They feel much more entitled to challenge women and say that they're wrong, or they're not credible, or not competent. And yeah, you just look at it and you're like, it doesn't really make much sense in the bigger scheme of things. But that's actively what we're thinking about, when the truth is, if a man challenges another man, they're more likely to listen to him.
Yeah.
That's the power of allyship, though. Using the keys that you do have to open the doors that you have access to, knowing that everyone has keys, but not everyone has the same keys.
Do you get attacked for campaigning for women at all by other men?
Yeah. Like I said to him, I've had men, again, like in my inbox saying, you simp, you white knight, throwing around some good old names. Some men like, oh, well, what do you want? All these women interested in you. Oh, I've got men saying, oh, well, you got all these women in your comments. Like, oh, well, it's good saying this stuff. And one man said, if you're an attractive guy, if I said it, I'm ugly, I'd get accused of all sorts of things. And I'm like, I think you're manifesting your own challenges there, mate.
Yeah.
And then you get men in your inbox saying, I'm interested to know more about it. Like, what can I do? You get lots of men reaching out. Like, I'm curious, but I'm a bit scared of putting myself out there. So you get that balance. We also get some women who are like, not your space to be saying this kind of stuff.
Yes.
You're working in businesses doing something that a woman should be doing, so you're taking up their space. Like women saying, you don't get a lot of men in your comments, so you mustn't be doing any work. And the truth is, there's always going to be less men in the comments. It's more men in your inbox.
Yeah.
And more men actually asking you in real life about it. So I do get pushback. But for me, if I wasn't getting pushback, I wouldn't be doing something that was challenging. It would be easy, and other people would be doing it. So the pushback is an indicator that I am pushing something else, and that there's enough going out of place for people to be like, oh, I want to say something. So I see it as an indicator that actually you are creating enough thinking in people and creating enough irritation to have people react in some way. And when they react, it gives them a chance to actually think about how they respond to that. So, yeah, I get challenged, but like I said, I don't get trolled incessantly and have, real kind of things that put me in a place where I'm scared to sleep at night.
Yeah. But does that impact you mentally at all? Like when you get these challenges, I presume practically like on a daily basis, probably, right? I mean, how does that impact you mentally? Or does it impact you mentally at all?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, Tim, some people could sit here and say, oh, no, just slides off like Teflon. I mean,
I'm a tough guy. Come on.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, it's like being poked. It niggles, it nudges, it's annoying. One thing I don't do is take it personally.
Yes.
But there's just no value in that. And I'm focused on my mission. If it's not adding value to the mission, and it's not that valuable, then it's just noise, right? And I always tell myself, more about them than it is about me. Not so often the case in people who are pushing back against those trying to make social change, because they, in some ways, and themselves want to be part of the change. They want to be leading the change, but they probably don't want to put the work in. So it says more about them than it does about me.
Yeah. And did you get more men wanting to join you to say, you know what, Lee, we want to help out. We want to do what you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah, we get men all the time coming and saying, first it usually starts, I wish I could do what you do. And I'm like, well, you can. Just takes time, build some of that foundational knowledge, then start speaking about it. You are going to feel uncomfortable. You are going to feel a bit scared. But actually, that's a sign that you're growing. And don't start by chucking some opinions online, because as soon as you do that, you put yourself in a really vulnerable position. Start with speaking and getting to know people in your own world. Use the fact that there's lots of TED Talks, podcasts, books out there to give you perspectives that you don't have.
Yeah.
Then go and speak to people and get some more insight. Practice your listening. Do that work on yourself. And then gradually you will feel more braver and confident to step out there and, be more vocal. And the truth is, Tim, there are lots of different types of way to be an ally. Some people are more vocal, more activist, more on the front lines. Some people are more in the back end, tinkering around with systems, challenging narratives, and doing stuff, and they're not as visible or vocal, but they're still doing the work. And we all need to have a think about which kind of ally can we most effectively be with our skill set, our perspective, and what we have to bring.
Yeah. And the final question, because obviously I think we could probably carry on talking for another 2 hours, but I always try to sort of end the episode with some positivity where possible.
Yes.
And again, because obviously, this is your business, but ultimately, if your market disappears, which is financially not good for you, but it also means that you've achieved the mission. Do you think you will ever achieve this mission? Or at least in our lifetime?
Ooh, good one, Tim. So I actually think that parts of it will be achieved. Other parts will be a fundamental kind of journey for the rest of humanity. Because if we think about how technology is evolving and how humans are shifting and changing, the truth is these are skills that you're not born with. So every generation is going to need these skills. These skills are going to morph. Technology will change. The world will spin faster. There might be environmental disaster. There'll be all sorts of challenges that we're going to face as a species. Ultimately, in some ways, allyship is like crisis management skills.
Yeah.
It's the agility and adaptability to move through situations that are not what you expect, not what you normally see, not where your knowledge lies. But actually, it's a skill set that allows humans to move through adverse times. And adversity isn't going anywhere. So for me, the skills will always be important to build. They might not always look exactly the same, but they will always have the same essence. And the mission is to get more people building these skills so they are ready to navigate an increasingly uncertain, complex, and sometimes incomprehensible future, right? But even these skills can help people to consider how they master the technologies that we have in our lives rather than letting themselves be mastered by them. And I think that is in itself a lifelong pursuit. So whether I'll be doing this till the day that I die, who knows? But it's definitely going to be something that's a continuous journey for us.
The interesting thing, like one of my earliest guests, Professor Jeremy Leavesley, was a mathematician. He said that everybody talks about intelligence and this and that, but actually real intelligence is having the ability to adapt to change. And the world is changing all the time. And, so that kind of makes you think. So I feel that, my general, message that I got from you, which I hope that it's going to resonate with people is that, we have our differences, we have our disagreements, but the one thing that is uniting us right now is the crisis that we're all facing around the world. I mean, the environmental crisis is real. Political crisis, apparently, we're seeing right now is real. We're getting more wars, not peace. That's real. So whatever divisions we have with disagreements, it's not going to make it any better. Like if we actually work together, unite, right, and learn from each other's differences, we can actually at least survive the catastrophe. I mean, I use the analogy that we're all basically a bunch of frogs in boiling water right now.
Yeah. The heat is going up, and
the heat is going up. We're not in control of the heat. That's the problem. We're not in control of the heat. So we basically either, at least take control of the heat, because it's turning into lava soon at this rate, or at least we'll help each other out and get the fuck out of that boiling water. I think that is the reality that we're living today. So we need more people like you, man. Like we need more allies. Let's put it that way. So on that note, I want to say thank you that you shared that message on this podcast. I mean, this is what we're trying to do with this podcast, to kind of push that message out there. But for people who want to know more about what you're doing, I mean, what are you up to these days?
Yeah, so obviously, like I discussed, the work on allyship in the workplace, the work with boys in schools, a lot of advocating for policy change to get some regulation in place, and ensuring that our kind of insights from boys are fed into this to make sure that they have a voice as well. Obviously, I have a book out that came out in January, Momentum, and that's 13 ways to unlock your potential. I mean, it's really well reviewed, and it's actually a great book thinking, for me, it's the 20-year career, the 13 lessons I wish I'd have known 20 years ago when I started, that I've had to learn the hard way since. Very good for thinking about navigating uncertainty, moving through change, and redefining what's important. So yeah, with those three things are keeping me very busy, as well as my 3 kids and all the other things I get up to.
Yeah, well, for the listeners, as always, the links are in the description. So make sure you check out the book. I mean, definitely I'm going to do that. So, but with that, Lee, my friend, thank you so much for joining us. And I think we're going to have more conversations for sure. But we have to do something together. We need to do something together, like some sort of, an event where we can talk more about these things with the audience.
This is just a start, Tim.
Oh, yes. We're just scratching the surface, right? So, Lee, my friend, thanks a lot, my man.
Thank you.
Well, my friends, this is it. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. Thank you so much for joining us. Now, before we go away, if you are on YouTube, please make sure that you hit the subscribe button below. It really makes a massive difference for the growth of our channel. And if you're following us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, you need to give us a star review. Apparently, your following means nothing unless you give us a star review. Don't ask me why, but give us whatever star review that you think is fair. And if you're not following us, what are you doing? Come on, man. It doesn't cost you anything. It really makes a big difference. I really, really appreciate your support. But also, if you've got cash to spare, consider to become a founding member. We are an independent medium. We're not reliant on any kind of company that gets money from Russian oligarchs or any kind of weird sponsorships or anything like that. All of the companies that work with us are genuine companies that I know and I like, and those who are not afraid of me calling out the bullshit and calling out all the crap, because if they've got nothing to hide, they've got nothing to hide. But ultimately, it's the members, you guys, our subscribers, our followers, our founding members, or those of you who actually just donated us like $1 here, a couple of bucks there, $5 there. All of that makes a big difference. This is what makes us truly independent. We're not chasing clickbait because we don't want clickbaits. We want facts. We want the truth. We want something that we can all aspire to, and something that truly make us at least work harder to make the world a better place. Not just talk about it, but actually make it happen. And of course, it supports all of our campaigns as well. So my friends, thank you so much. Much love. And I'll see you in the next one. Peace.